Let us assume for a moment that you wanted to be assured that your child was yours, and you didn't have paternity tests.
Okay.
How could you do that?
In the old, I guess, a long time ago?
Well, it's not that long ago. Paternity tests are modern.
Fine. And you want to be sure of it?
Yeah.
I guess then only you would be having sex with your wife or something like that, or you would want to have sex with a woman who wasn't actively having sex with other men at the same time, and I think that's perfect. I think that's a perfectly normal boundary.
So wait,
to
hang
have.
on. What is the last thing you just said? You would want to make sure what?
That you and your wife were the only people having sex with each other.
Right.
I think there's nothing wrong with monogamy.
What would be a good tell for that?
What do you mean?
That she wasn't having sex with a lot of men before you, right?
Wait. No, I don't necessarily think that's the case.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think so. I think people can engage in a lot of sexual activity because they're enjoying that, and they enter a monogamous relationship and decide that that's what's best for them, and that's what they want. Well, I don't think that just because she chooses to have a lot of sex outside of a relationship means that she should automatically be distrusted within a monogamous relationship.
So let's just make sure we got this right.
Is it same for men, though?
We're going to set this. No, it's not. Well, but I'll get into that next.
If a man has sex with a bunch of people, and he gets into a relationship,
I'm going to explain
should he be distrusted?
I'm going to explain it.
Okay.
But let's move into this because we're talking about the social destruction aspect. So let's start with this. You think that it is the case that if a woman has a promiscuous past, right, that should essentially not in any way show, men should show no distrust towards that woman for the purposes of having a family with her.
Hold on. Was she in relationships with people, and was she lying to them, and was she cheating on them?
She was just having a lot of promiscuous sex with many, many men.
Then that's fine. Well, I guess we're assuming also no STDs, no stuff like that.
Sure, we just bake it in.
Okay, fine. Then yeah, no, I don't.
There shouldn't be any trust distinction at all?
No. I mean, you have conversations with this person. Be like, yeah, no, I had that past. I enjoyed that part of my life, but I want to settle down now.
And would you say that those women would probably be on par with trust of like virgin women when it came to that? Right. It follows, right?
Sure.
Except it doesn't, because you didn't think about it, and here's why.
Okay.
There's if I were to ask you about comparisons, right? Comparatively, if a woman only has sex with one partner, can she compare any other partners to that man she's had sex with?
No, I guess not.
So she wouldn't be knowing what she was missing out on or not missing out on, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So then if that's the case, if a virgin got married, right, she would have no other men to make comparisons against for any potentiality she might be missing out on, correct?
Hold on. Yes, but then you're claiming that you should marry virgin women because there might not be another guy, or they're not going to have a reference for another guy who's better at having sex than you are, or
better at whatever the traits are. So the more that human beings experience partners, how's that weird? It just blows your position.
No, it doesn't blow my position.
You said there's no distinct thing that we could ever point to, right? And this is because when I asked you, hey, do you think that it's the case that if you have a virgin woman, right, versus a very promiscuous woman, they're equally as trustworthy? You said yes. However, you instantly blow your own position out the second you say that there is a comparative analysis which people are going to be making. That would erode the trust immediately.
Wait a second. So just so I can understand your position, I want to just restate what you're saying back to you. Are you saying that because a woman who had more sex before marriage has more experience with what men she likes and what men she doesn't like, that therefore within the marriage, if she's unhappy with the state of the current marriage, she has things to compare it to, and thus she might be more likely to leave? Is that what you're saying?
Well, not just that, right? But it could be that if she had never experienced, and in fact this is likely because women polled say this, if she had never experienced these other men and had no comparison, she would actually be much happier in the current relationship that she was in.
Well, okay, so ignorance is bliss is what you're arguing?
It's not ignorance.
Well,
right?
It is. She doesn't know about the other men.
It's a comparative. Well, then by your standards, should she just fuck a bunch of men so that she knows?
No, not necessarily. Wait.
Which thing is more preferable for society then?
Wait, but you're making a false dichotomy.
What's the dichotomy?
You're making a false dichotomy.
I can't wait.
You are. You're saying that there's on one side that women do not have sex or before marriage whatsoever at all, and the other one is women just fuck people all the time, no matter what.
No, just promiscuity. I'm just asking. It would logically follow that if women had fucked two men, she now has a comparison.
Yeah.
Okay, so then
I think it's a good
we would just say that every single time there's an additional. Well, okay, then if you think it's a good thing,
then you have to be better.
Then wait a second.
Then if you think to be better than the other guys.
No. Let's back up. Then you think it's a good thing. You just said, I think that's a good thing. So that means if that's a good thing, why shouldn't they fuck a lot of men so that they have the largest comparison sample size possible?
I think it depends on the individual woman and what she wants. Some people don't want to have that much sex. Some people just don't.
That doesn't answer my question.
Wait.
If you think it's good that she had sex with one more person, right? Because now she has a comparative sample size, why shouldn't she have sex with hundreds of different people to make sure she has the best comparative sample size?
To absurdity.
Oh, bro, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that it's upsetting to you. But
it's not upsetting. Hold on. Do you think that eating broccoli is good? Mm-hmm. Do you think that we should just eat as much broccoli as fucking possible all the time?
But do I?
Did you think we just eat an insane amount? No. So there can be a good thing, and that thing can be good up to a threshold.
Yeah, the thing is, though, is that if I were to say, right, eating lots of broccoli is good, so I have a comparison against other, I don't know, other vegetables or something like this, right? And you rightly asked me then, well, shouldn't we eat like a ton of broccoli then so we have the highest comparison? We can also make that and say, well, but we cut it off at this before it gets to the point of like you're going to throw up or something like this, right? That's fair, but that would still equal a lot more men, right?
Sure.
Yeah. So then you think, honestly, that women probably ought to fuck a lot of men.
Not ought. No. Because I also think it's
then wouldn't they be missing out, bro?
No, I don't think they're missing out.
How do they really know what their preferences are, though, bro?
Because there's because there are different women who want different things. You're ascribing a monolith. Some women might want to be virgins until marriage because they value sex in a significant way that other women don't.
Yeah, but how do they really know unless they're having sex with multiple men?
You don't necessarily have to have sex with multiple men if you don't want that comparison.
Okay.
You don't have to, just because a comparison might be helpful in certain instances, doesn't mean that the negatives for that individual person might outweigh the positive benefits that they're having.
Perfect. So then is it the case then, right, that if we're just looking at the cost-benefit analysis of comparison for outcome, if we are to have the best outcomes with women who've only had one sexual partner, because there's no comparative analysis.
Best outcomes? Can you just?
Yeah, this means they stay in their marriages longer and report happiness levels that are higher, which all virgins do almost universally.
Okay.
What did I say?
Overwhelming majority.
Overwhelming majority do. Okay. Same thing, and the reason I say universal is because it doesn't matter the nation. It doesn't matter the nation, at least in the Western nation. It doesn't matter the nation when it comes to dissatisfaction. Now, you can look at some nations, perhaps in the Middle East, where they measure dissatisfaction, but you can't tell if it's because they're virgins or because they live in the Middle East, right? Like, you can't tell. But in Western nations, you can tell. And here's how we know. We can do an analysis from the religious, right? The more religious they are, the less promiscuous they often are, and the more often they get married virgins, right? And here's what ends up happening. The non-religious, the secular women to get married virgins, and the religious women to get married virgins both report a much higher sexual satisfaction rate, much higher attraction rate, right? And they have much less in the way of the marriage splitting up because they make no comparative analysis.
I think making a weird comparative analysis is kind of strange because what it feels like you're saying, and correct me if I'm wrong, is I don't want my wife to have had sex with other men because I don't want her to compare the sex we're having to other men, which might make me feel insecure and make me feel that my sex is not as good.
Do you honestly believe that that's a less tenable position than yours, which is I want my wife to have had sex with multiple men to compare other men to me?
Hold on. It is. Oh, no. Wait,
I'm just saying.
No, Andrew.
That is what you're saying,
bro. No, it's not.
Well, then why would you be against it?
Wait, I'm not, because women aren't a monolith, Andrew, and women don't all want the same thing.
So what? That's not what we're talking about.
Wait,
did I say women were a monolith or they all want the same thing? Or did I say that if you make a comparative analysis for outcome, that the outcomes tend to be a lot better for the virgin women because they don't make the comparative analysis?
I think it is strange to say people ought to have less experience so they don't know what they're missing out on.
I think
so they don't know what they're missing out on.
So then you're right. They don't know what so then you want your woman to have previously been fucked a bunch. So you wouldn't want her to be with you only because she didn't know what she was missing out on.
Yeah.
Right?
So
okay.
Wait a second,
all right,
Andrew. Wait a second. Let me respond to this, Andrew.
Okay,
let me respond to this.
Bro.
It actually doesn't matter to me necessarily if she had sex before.
That's not what I asked you. I said, do you want your woman to have been previously fucked by other men so she doesn't know what she's missing out on? And you said, yeah. So
Sure.
here's the thing.
And
here's why I did this to you.
It's just not that important.
Here's why
to
I
me.
did this to you.
It's just not that important to me.
Because you're a clip chimp. Like I went to your
No.
channel and you're a
Okay.
clip chimp, right? You ain't never living that clip down.
I don't.
Never living that clip down.
I don't think there is a universal here. I don't think,
I know.
for example, let me
say it
say
was
this.
universal?
Hold on.
I asked you.
Wait. I guess you would be holding all else equal, right? Are you holding all else equal? So someone who had a lot of sexual experiences,
don't run
for
away
someone
from
who
it.
never. No, I am, because I think
You
this
are?
is irrelevant. I think this is a relevant distinction, Andrew. If there is someone who had a lot of sex and they are identical in every other character trait and quality, and someone who didn't, that woman is probably going to know what she wants sexually, and that's great.
Okay.
Because then she knows what she likes,
Wow.
and that's good.
And you would prefer that kind of woman.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would.
Okay. Fair enough. So when it comes to promiscuity in society, then, right? Women who have a lot of sex, they have a lot more experiences to really know what they want.
Certain women, yes. Hold on, because some women might not want that, Andrew.
But how
So
would they know if they haven't done it? They don't have the experience.
I actually do think it's probably good for people to have sex before they get married, because then you get into a marriage and the sex is terrible, and then it can
Then
be
why are their
terrible.
satisfaction rates so high, bro?
There can be high satisfaction rates.
No,
for
there
certain
mostly
women.
is.
Yes, correct.
Yes.
Correct. I'm not saying there's not, but
Yeah.
I'm saying that for individual people, I think it's probably best to have some experience. That doesn't mean that every single girl should have sex with as many men as she can.
Well, but you
Because
would admit that if a woman's had sex with 1,000 guys,
No.
that chick really probably knows exactly what she wants.
She probably knows what she wants,
Yeah.
but also
That's a lot of experience.
Wait a second.
You
You're
wouldn't want
correct.
to keep her away
You're
from
correct.
that, right?
No, Andrew.
Let me ask you this. Would
No,
you have
but-
sex with a woman? Would you be with a woman, marry a woman who had sex with 2,000 men because she knows what she wants? Now she can compare you against 2,000 men.
I wouldn't want to marry someone who's a porn star, because that's just not that's not aligned with my lifestyle. I want someone with the same interests and who's interested in the same career field as me.
What?
So I want to marry someone.
So if they
within
could be
that
a
same
porn
thing.
star and interested in your career
No,
field,
wait, no.
bro?
I would want them to be interested in that field and working in that field, because I want someone who's comparable in that way, because I don't want to.
Why do they have to work in the field you're in to be interested?
I think, but that's something that I value. I value someone who's interested in the same things I am and pursues that as a career.
So you would never marry a woman who's not in the same occupation as you?
Not exact occupation, but same domain of thing. For example, I wouldn't want to marry someone who's a grocery store clerk if I'm a lawyer. I don't want that power. I don't want that power differential. I want us to be
Power
even.
differential?
I think so, a little bit. I don't want someone to be entirely dependent on me and my income.
Well, what do you mean a power differential? Do you think?
I think there can be in terms of income. If one person's making a lot more money than the other person, I think then there can be a power differential if someone gets into a relationship and doesn't have the ability to get out of that relationship because they're financially tied to that person. And I would never want someone to be financially tied to me.
I see.
That's what I'm saying.
I see. So men shouldn't get married.
That's not what I'm saying. I think men should marry women who are on their level.
No.
I think men should marry women who are on their
I don't
level.
think you realize what you just said.
No.
The divorce initiators, you would agree, are mostly women, right?
I think so, yes.
Yeah. Do you think that when women initiate these divorces that they just do it out of pocket, or do you think there was a big buildup? They thought about it for a long time.
I would venture to say the second, but I'm sure you're going to say it's not.
No. It is, right?
Okay.
They think about it for a long time. However, if they're the ones who are springing the divorce on the husband, right? He hasn't thought about the divorce for a long time, has he?
I don't think that's necessarily the case. It could be.
It is the case.
Wait a second. Is there data to show that
Yes,
men who
men
get blindsided by the divorce?
And here's what the data shows, right? The women initiate it, and the men don't want it. They don't want the divorce.
Okay.
Women want the divorce, right?
Yeah,
not the men. So they've been thinking about the divorce for a while, right? So the thing is that if they can just go and get divorced whenever it is that they want, they can just literally go and file paperwork, right? And the man's not prepared for it. They have an exit strategy. They're prepared. They've been thinking about it for a long time. Man, not right. Man, hang on. Man hasn't.
Then
So
that man married the wrong woman.
So men
That
would be.
man
Hang
married the
on,
wrong
bro.
woman.
So the financial dependency aspect here, right?
That-
The man is also financially dependent that his wife's not going to divorce him, right?
I think that.
Right?
that
Hang on.
man-
Right?
Hold on.
Answer my fucking question and then respond to it.
I don't understand your question. Are they partially financially dependent?
Every
on,
married couple's dependent on each other.
Yeah,
Yes,
they're-
every
they're-
one of them.
then
So
they're
if she
partially
blindsides
dependent.
him with a divorce, right, then what happens here is when you make the case, financial dependency, there's financial dependency and that leads to like power dynamics, then that would mean women actually have the power dynamic interest here. Because if they can initiate divorce whenever they want and devastate a man financially,
so can men.
Men aren't.
Okay, but they can't.
But they descriptively aren't.
Then why aren't they?
Because they want to stay married. They don't think, they're not looking for an exit strategy. Women are plotting an exit strategy. So men get blindsided with this, bro.
I think that women who blindside someone with a divorce, and it's not a conversation of, I'm not happy with this. I'm not happy. You're not, meeting X, Y, or Z needs. I feel like you're not communicating with me. Maybe there's infidelity involved. Then I think that if she doesn't talk about any of that, and then just suddenly
no,
slips
she can
in the
talk about
papers.
all of that, but it's still blind. Here's the thing. Here's the problem with this, right? Is like you seem to want to take human nature out of the human aspect here. If you know that you're going to leave your significant other, right? Are you going to like try to leverage it so that they have the best chance for custody and they have the best chance for financial security? Or are you going to leverage things the best possible way for yourself?
No, actually the first one. And that's what my dad did in the divorce from my stepmom.
Your dad, yes.
I think it was a really
rational, reasonable man. Yes.
I think it was a very good thing of him to do. He didn't leave my stepmom completely like
that was awful
tarnished.
Good of him. But do you agree with me that within human nature, if you know that you're going to exit, you know that you're leaving, right? Just like with a job, aren't you going to try to make
job is different.
Aren't you going to try to make the best conditionals possible for the exit? So that you're as financially set as possible.
Putting in your 2 weeks is not the same thing as signing divorce
No, it's not putting
papers.
in 2 weeks. Here's what you do when you change a job. You don't put in your 2 weeks.
Whatever, you quit.
You've
I don't
already
care.
arranged a job for
fine.
6 fucking months before you ever put in your 2 weeks.
It's still not the same because you don't have
it's not.
You don't have obligations to that individual who you're working for in terms of emotional
Yes,
security.
Of course you have obligations to them.
You can quit a job.
Yeah,
It's
I
fine
know,
to
but
quit a
you
job.
still made you can quit a marriage, but you still made a fucking agreement like you did with your job.
Sure, and I think people in marriages have a responsibility to care for the other person.
They have a duty.
In a way,
they have a duty.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
I think everyone has a duty. I just don't think the duties are gender specific.
Oh, they're not.